What's the word, Harrisburg? We have a very special show planned for you right now, and I'm speaking directly to the parents out there, the moms and dads. Hey, we're just trying to get by every single day. It's a different struggle, no matter what day it is, and hopefully the person who's with us right now is going to help us out with that. Amy Bollinger, trauma nurse, 30-plus years experience in the industry. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, you and I, we go back a little
We
bit.
do.
I mean, this is the
We
first
do.
time this is for WHBG Channel 20, but you and I, in our previous career iterations, have crossed paths once or twice.
We have virtually.
Virtually, right. This is the
right.
first time we've done this in person,
That's
and,
right.
and it's a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being with us in studio today. And here we are. We're taping this middle of September. School just started. Your son just started college for the first time. My son started kindergarten for the first time. Both of us are going through this whirlwind of emotion right now.
A lot of feelings. There's a lot of feelings right now.
What is the hardest part for you? Because, like, for me, it didn't hit me until the first time that I took my son. I watched him get on the school bus for the first time, and he was fine. No problems at all. Like, just wave, bye, and then just hopped on, no issues, no clinging to the leg or anything like that. What was it like for you with your son going to Penn State?
So my oldest is actually a junior, but because of the pandemic, he lived at home for 2 years. So I was really used to seeing him, several times a week, just touching base. So he's up at main campus now. And the first when I took him up, it was so stressful, and he was not happy, and he was so stressed about everything, and he was like, "See ya, Mom." So I was okay. We went back this past Sunday, my other son, my younger son, and I, and that was really awful to drive away. I
Really?
struggled.
So it wasn't
Yeah.
until a couple weeks later that it kind of hit you?
The realization. Like, I think sometimes, I always say nurses are famous for compartmentalization. Right, we compartmentalize. So I take my feelings, I put them over here, I do the job that has to be done. And he was so excited to be up there and explore this whole new world he'd never seen before. He'd seen when we'd go up for a visit, but wasn't in a dorm living, getting to know all these new people. He was so excited that it was okay. But he has been a little homesick, and realizing that, wow, my safety net's 2 hours from home.
Okay.
And so to go up there and see how thrilled he was to see me and his brother, which is not usually,
Wow. Okay.
how he's not usually the kid that's like, "Great to see you, Mom." Like, he's not that kid.
So I've heard stories where the hard part for parents is when they go back to see their kid and they realize that the kid doesn't need them as much anymore. Like, it's the total opposite of what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it's that realization, they're on their own.
Yeah.
Yours, what you're saying is it was the other way around.
Yes.
Where, he does kind of need us in a way.
Yeah.
And I can't be there to support him the way I used to be able
Right.
to.
And now it's by phone and text, right? So I'm not right there one-to-one FaceTime, real life face-to-face having conversations with him. Now we're texting and talking on the phone, and that's a whole different dynamic. And it's recognizing he's 20. And I, instead of saying you should do, I didn't want that when I was
Sure.
20, but it's, have you thought about, what do you think about this? And how does, what are your options? What are your options as you see them?
And I mean, you're going through this for the first time, and your other son is how old?
15.
Okay, so he's still
sophomore in high
kind
school.
of a couple years away. So at least you'll be prepared.
I hope so.
The second time around.
I hope so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, and they're both very different individuals. They're both very different people, and that's been a great joy as a mom to watch how different they are as they've grown.
And I mean, you being a nurse, like it is ingrained in you to have that caring gene. Like, all you want to do
Yeah.
is care for people,
Yes.
and to not be able to kind of care the same way you normally would is got to be impossible.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's great that mom is so caring, but it's really annoying when they want to, like, be independent and make their own decisions. And I have to really check myself and not be that hovering helicopter, whatever the words are now that
Right.
the kids say, right? I have to really watch myself.
So my son is 5 years old,
Yeah.
and he just started kindergarten. And the best part about it is that, I mean, he loves it.
Good.
He loves to learn. He's always loved to learn. You could tell, like, when you could tell the specific times, in his early years, whether it's through preschool or pre-K or even before then, when he got bored is when he started acting up.
Sure.
And now, I mean, he comes home every day. He's exhausted, which is fantastic, because they put him through the ringer at school. But he loves to learn. He loves talking about learning. And yeah, like, that is, on the one hand, it's great. And on the other hand is, oh, where has the time gone? Which is so cliche for parents to say. But seriously, like, what is happening here?
It's so true. Like, I remember those days of the preschool and toddler days where the days were endless, right? I remember hearing a saying, the days are long, but the years are short. The days can sometimes feel endless when their automatic internal alarm clock goes off at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, are you kidding? We're doing it now.
That internal alarm clock still goes off shortly after
So
5.
5 o'clock in the morning, and you're thinking, like, I remember days by like 3 o'clock when no one would take a nap. I was like, you gotta be kidding. How am I going to make it till their bedtime for my bedtime, right? But when I look back, it just has gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
My my teenage boys don't want their mom to hug them. There's no tucking them in for bed. Like there's none of that anymore. And that's hard.
It's funny. I last night there was a Celebrity Family Feud or something like that,
Yeah.
and one of the fast money questions was, what's the age? So we polled 100 people. What's the age that kids say they no longer wanted to be in bed with their parents? And someone guessed 3. And it's absolutely 0 people.
Yeah.
The number one answer was 10.
Really?
And my kid's
Yeah.
5. I'm thinking, oh, but he still just wants to jump into bed every morning. Which,
Yep.
on the one hand, is great. On the other hand, you run, oh, get out,
I'm still
get
sleeping
out. I'm
over
still
here.
sleeping.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna jump up and down.
Yeah.
But no, it is emotionally, it is hard. And then from the physical perspective, just to kind of segue into
Sure.
what a lot of parents deal with now is the anxiety of, just simple safety, like even walking to the bus in the morning. My neighborhood doesn't have sidewalks, so I mean, and we have to walk down the block in order to get to the bus stop. It's not like the bus doesn't come right up to
Right.
the driveway, so we got to walk down the block. And there's a safety aspect too, because he's so excited. He wants to kind of get out in front, and you just want to grab his arm. And that's been the normal thing as a parent that I've had to adjust to.
Sure.
Is you need to literally, physically loosen the reins a little bit, because
Right.
all I want to do is grab
Yeah.
him by the shirt and not let go, because you immediately think of worst case scenario. But from your perspective,
Sure.
how often have you kind of experienced incidents when it comes to traffic or not paying attention to the road, cars not paying attention to, school bus stop signs, things of that nature?
So kids, well, anybody, I was going to say kids get hit by cars. Well, adults get hit by cars too. Pedestrian accidents are real. They're one of the top 5 mechanisms of injury and trauma across this country, not just in South Central Pennsylvania or in the Harrisburg area. We see people get hit by cars, and unfortunately, kids do too. I'm a big believer in keeping a hold of your child while you're walking on a street without sidewalks. Especially, we're going to be going into darker days, right? The sun, we're not going to see much of the sun once it gets cooler and colder in the fall and winter, and drivers aren't looking for kids. Drivers are distracted. And I know that may make me sound very jaded, but it's what I see. It's what we see in the trauma community and in trauma. Drivers aren't watching for kids. Kids aren't necessarily watching for drivers, and it can be a recipe for disaster.
You mentioned the sunlight thing, and that's
Yes.
really important. I want to kind of focus in on that,
Yeah,
because
sure.
it was something that, like, my son gets picked up at 6:53.
That's early.
Brutal.
That's brutal.
In a month,
It'll be dark.
it'll be dark. Sun won't come up until after
That's
7.
right.
It'll be dark. What can families do, what can parents do to make sure to give that extra sense of security if their son or daughter does go walk by themselves to a bus stop, if they're not hanging on by the shirt collar, what can they do?
Couple things to talk about with your children. I certainly would not have a kindergartner walking alone to a bus stop on a road without a sidewalk if it's at all possible. I think that has its own set of dangers. But if you're talking about a child who's more school-aged, middle elementary school, middle school, high school, having those reminders, reflective backpack, something reflective on the backpack, something reflective so a driver actually can see with the headlights, something will shine and catch a driver's eye. If it's a road without sidewalks, walking facing traffic. For our middle school and high schoolers, put your phone away. Unless you're using it as a flashlight, put your phone away. Because if you're looking down, you're not looking at the traffic coming towards you. So not looking into your phone, paying attention to your surroundings.
And the walking with traffic coming towards you is mainly just to see the traffic coming towards you
so
in
you
case
can
you
see.
have to move out of the way if the driver doesn't see you.
Absolutely. So you're facing traffic, so you're watching the cars coming towards you, and if that car coming towards you is coming awfully close, you have a fighting chance to hop out of the way and into the grass or off the road, the berm.
In your years of experience, I mean, do incidents, traffic-related, school-related, school bus type stuff, incidents involving pedestrians pick up around, this time of year when school is kind of getting back into session and, people are just getting used to, again, school buses being out on the road?
So they do. If they're going to happen, that's when we're going to see it. Fortunately, and I'm going to knock on wood when I say it, fortunately, we don't see that often at all. It's not so much buses hitting children. It might be a bus accident where a bus collides with another vehicle or something of that nature. What we see much more often are kids who are walkers, the walkers crossing where there's not a crosswalk, running out between two parked cars. An older sibling and a younger sibling walking to school, and the older sibling might be distracted and the younger sibling darts out.
I know. And you mentioned that, and it makes me think. Just the other day, I went to pick up my son from school, and at the school, it's a K-8 school. Okay. So within the school, or they just left, it looked like a kid that couldn't have been any older than my son's age, with his brother, who I would say was probably 6th or 7th grade, and they were walking home from school. And I didn't notice this until the last minute, but they were trying to cross in the middle of the street, not at a crosswalk, not at an intersection. They were trying to cross in the middle of the street of a really busy road. If anyone's familiar with Locust Lane in the Harrisburg area, that is an incredibly busy road, especially during back to school, because you have a couple schools. You have Central Dauphin Middle School right there as well. There's a lot of traffic, and I would have stopped in the middle of the road had I seen them, but they weren't at a crosswalk, so it's not in my periphery at that moment in time to notice this. So yeah, please, if you're walking home from school, if your children are walking home from school, make sure they use crosswalks, make sure they use intersections, and make sure if it does have a walk sign or do not walk sign, please follow that and make sure that it says walk or use a traffic light.
Right. I would say one of the biggest things is don't assume your kids remember anything you say, right? So how many, I feel like
my son will give her my son will give a run for that money, but it's collective.
Well,
collective memory,
selective hearing, right?
Yeah.
Selective memory.
Selective memory, excuse me.
They remember the things that I've done that maybe weren't so great as a mom, but maybe not the instructions.
Right.
The instructions sound like the peanuts, wah, 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 the teacher, right? So having those conversations repeatedly and intentionally, at the breakfast table in the morning. When you go to school today, tell me where you're going to cross the street. Not preaching, but make them think, where are they going to cross the street? And then if they're telling you the wrong thing, then you can correct them. But make them think instead of that preachy. Kids don't always hear it when we're preaching in their general direction, but quizzing them, making them think.
And it doubles as just family conversation at
Correct.
the table.
Correct.
And so you're learning a little something about everything.
Yes.
Is that the number one thing that you kind of come across, those
for
Those pedestrian
for pedestrians, yeah.
crosswalks.
So kids who are walkers,
Yeah.
kids who are bikers, like the bicyclists, kids who want to ride their bike to school, and then they do the same. They dart out. They don't stop. They don't cross at a crosswalk, or they're on a state rural road where the average speed for a driver is 45 miles an hour, and the cars are flying. The sun's, this morning I was blinded taking my own son to school. You're driving down the street and come around a corner, and that sun's right in the windshield. It's hard to see. Kids, yes, they have helmets on. Hopefully they're all wearing a bike helmet. Hopefully they're following that rule of your home, or they're actually wearing the helmets you provide for them. But even so, a car, 2,000-pound, 3,000-pound vehicle versus a bike is the car's going to win every time.
Yeah.
So just being mindful of those kinds of things.
And wear a helmet. Please wear a helmet.
Yeah.
If you're riding your bicycle, please
Yes.
wear a helmet.
Yes.
You can make the case wear a helmet if you're a pedestrian, but
Wear a
we're not
helmet.
gonna. Yeah, just wear a helmet.
Maybe not if you're walking. You might get
Right.
some looks, but for sure,
Yeah.
wear a helmet.
The other thing that I think, and there's no easy kind of transition into
Sure.
this, but the other thing that gives parents so much anxiety now more than ever is, the feeling of, I'm sending my kid to school and I don't know if I'm going to see him or her at the end
Right.
of the day. It is traumatizing.
It's terrifying.
Terrifying
It's terrifying.
is the right word,
Yeah.
because you just
You
don't
don't know.
know. We just talked about things that you can have conversations with
Sure.
at the family dinner table or the breakfast table. What do parents need to talk about with their kids when it comes to, hey, if you are in this situation, what to do,
Right.
and when that comes about?
Yeah, so this is always a really awful, difficult conversation to have, right? It's not something that's warm and fuzzy at the dinner table, but I think it's important. I think the biggest thing as a parent talking to your children is your child. You know what is going to crank a child's anxiety and what is not. I think not having the conversation doesn't serve your child should there be a crisis. I think you have to have a conversation, and keeping it I don't want to say surface level, but keeping it safe, and having the conversation that listen to your teacher, listen to the adults, like for your little tiny people.
Who don't know, like they can't comprehend.
They
like
trust
my son,
everybody, right? Most
Well,
kids trust everybody.
and not only that, but they can't comprehend. I mean, they can't comprehend.
No, nor
depth.
should they. Nor should they. I don't want
people
a
getting hurt.
5-year-old and 6-year-old to understand or to even have an active shooter drill on their brain. Unfortunately, we don't live in that world today, right? We live in a very different world. But having the conversation that if there's an emergency at your school and your teacher says, I need you to go into this room and be as quiet as you can, following those directions, no questions asked, you have to do that. You have to do that. Then having conversations with your older children, I in my line of work, I probably talk about a lot of things with my kids that a lot of adults don't, but having those questions, asking them, what are you learning? What are you doing? Tell me about, do you do an Alice drill or do you do run, hide, fight? What does that look like?
What is an Alice drill? That's the first
Alice
I've
drill is
heard of
very similar, and I don't remember what the mnemonic stands for,
Okay.
but it's very similar to run, hide, fight, and it's something that law enforcement tends to work with schools and school faculty and staff and administrators so that they know how to keep kids safe should there be an active shooter situation or a violent situation in the school. But having the conversation, I can remember when I first started teaching tourniquet use and some basic TAC med principles with different school districts in the area, having a conversation with my son, my youngest, and saying, if you are told to run, where are you running to? Where are you going to go? And him saying, well, we lived really close to the school, and him saying, well, I'm just running home. And I'm like, okay. But having that conversation, thinking through, knowing they did the training earlier in the day, knowing that students had some kind of drill, and then talking to him, how you feeling about that, buddy?
Are we at the point where we should be telling our kids when they go to school, know where the exits are?
I hate to think that we are. That's that nursey, caring, nurturing part. I hate to even go there, but I think the kids know where the exits are. But having those, especially if an opportunity presents itself to have the conversation, like that that's your school, your son or daughter's school did some kind of active shooter or violence prevention drill that day, having a conversation. What did you learn? What did you have to do? And then maybe that segues into, do you know where the exits are? Do you know where do you always have your cell phone with you? Those kinds of things, because some schools, kids aren't allowed to have their cell phones with them. And do you have your cell phone? And where would you run to? And what would you do? And those kind of things. I hate that we live in this kind of world. And
I hate that we have to have this conversation, that this is even part of this conversation.
I do too.
I mean, when I graduated high school, I mean, the active shooter drill was not even in the lexicon.
We didn't even think about it.
No.
We did. So I graduated with the dinosaurs, right? So I graduated a very long time ago. I know, I'm teasing. Long time ago. I can remember hiding under our desks because we were in the Cold War. It was the 80s, right? So with Russia. And so we were hiding under our desk, the nuclear bomb, and, living near 3 Mile Island.
Like that's going to, right.
Like hiding under my desk is going to help me if there's a nuclear war. But, it was those things. Active shooter or people hurting children was not on our radar. We didn't even think about it. And I know my parents didn't think about it. It wasn't something that was even a part of our world or that we knew of as a part of our world.
It's a brutal conversation to have.
It's
like,
awful.
I can't even comprehend when people hear the phrase run, hide, fight. Because that is used a lot. I asked what Alice was. I wasn't sure. Run, hide, fight is something that I think is a lot more common.
Yes.
To someone that is unaware or has not heard that, explain what run, hide, fight is.
So, as I understand it, and I have never taught this, so that's my disclaimer. As I understand it, you have 3 choices, 3 things you can do if you're in a situation of violence or an active shooter situation. Run, try to get away from the situation. Run away, get out of the situation as best you can. Hide. If you can't run, then hide. Where do you hide? Find those places. Know where those safe places are. And I would even argue in your place of employment too. I mean, again, different world we're living in.
Any place in public.
Maybe a little doom and gloom, but think about those things on a day like today where it's beautiful and sunny, rather than a day when something bad is happening and now you're in a panic trying to figure out what you're going to do. So run, get away from the violence if you can. Hide, know where those safe places are for you to hide. And if you can't run and you can't hide, fight, and fight like hell. Right? Fight. And try to stop that person from harming others.
We need to close this conversation on a lighter note.
Sure, please.
I'm not sure where to go from here. But I do know we need to wrap up, but I can't end on that.
No, please don't.
We need to end on a lighter note.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll kind of cede the floor to you.
Sure.
Is there anything that you kind of wanted to talk about, or just kind of how was your summer?
Yeah. So just I would say the only thing I would say to try to not end on such a dismal note is we're all in this together. We don't live in a world right now that's real, that feels real collaborative. It still feels pretty divisive, and I think that we've lost our way. And I wish, and I think it's still possible for us to pull that back together and figure out and remember that at the end of the day, we're moms and dads. We all have our own families, and we're all in it together. And your children are my children, are my neighbor's children. Kids didn't ask to be born into this world, and we have a responsibility as the adults in the room to do right by them, whatever that looks like, however we define that, but doing right by all of our children. And how do we protect our kids?
I love that, and I want to kind of wrap up on this. We're going to have you back on. We'll make this, once every 3 weeks, once every month sort of deal. We're going to put our email address on the screen right now. And for anyone that's watching this, if you have additional questions, questions about, just parenting in general, like you said, we're all kind of in this together. We're all moms and dads. What I am experiencing now, you've experienced before. What I experienced 5 years ago, someone else is experiencing right now. We're going to put this email address up, and if you have any questions, send them to this email address, communications@harrisburgpa.gov. Next time you're on, we'll do our best to maybe answer some viewer questions.
Good.
And we'll go from there, because I think the best way to kind of get through issues that are kind of on the minds of parents that keep us up at night is to just talk about it.
Yes.
And that's what this is. This is a safe space for us to kind of go over this stuff.
Sounds perfect.
Amy Bollinger, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise, yes, on issues as it relates to trauma and children and parenting, and we really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks.
All right, and that'll do it for What's the Word Harrisburg. We'll check back in with you the next time here on WHBG TV 20.